Tying to Tying here. I'm Sierra Casey.
And I'm Bee Sie'Aira.
Today we're here with news anchor and reporter at WKYC, Miss Wiggins, Miss Danielle Wiggins.
Yes.
I'll lead it off to Bee to start us off with the first question.
All right. Well, how did you get into the business of becoming a reporter?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a honor to be here. I became interested in journalism my junior year of high school, and I'll save you the full long story, but basically I did a number of media opportunities in high school. I wrote for the newspaper. I was the morning announcements. I went to Bedford High School. So I would, good morning, these are your Bedford Senior High School morning announcements and then we will all go down the line. And I started off at the University of Missouri, then transferred to Kent State University. And because of some personal issues and things like that, I decided to go into producing because I wanted to stay here in Cleveland. And what that ended up back in those days, way back in the ancient early 2000s, is you couldn't come on air in Cleveland because they're right out of college, because that's just how it didn't work like that back then. And usually there are a number of media markets, and at the time, and still is, Cleveland is a top 25 market. So I would have had to move around, like go to a smaller city, a smaller station to be on air. So I knew that I needed to stay home for a while. So I decided to become a producer. Got my first job at 19, went over to Channel 5 and realized, I don't like this news producing thing. I don't like it. So I went back to school, went to Kent State, and got a master's degree in media management. And then I started working at NPR. I started like my own company, production. That was my master's program. And I realized, I don't want to do this either. So it's always nice to try different things, because Xing out what you don't want to do is helpful. And I started working at WKSU, which was the regional NPR affiliate, National Public Radio, and I produced a lifestyle show. And it was really fun, but that TV bug kept biting at me. I knew I didn't want to be a news producer, and I knew I wanted to be on air. So one day I just said a little prayer like, God, please open up a door for me. I know I don't have the on-air experience, but if one of the major stations have like a casting call, like open audition, sort of like American Idol, then maybe I can win them over with my personality. And about a week or two later, my mom calls and says, I don't know if you'll be interested in this, but WKYC is having a open casting call, like the very prayer I prayed, an open casting call for a traffic reporter position. Would you be interested? Yes, Mom, yes. So I went and signed up, I auditioned, and it was like an American Idol type thing. We had to get votes and everything. I won the voting competition, and then they put us through like some interviewing, and I ended up getting that job in 2013, and I'm still here to this day. It was horrible starting out because I was very green and didn't know what I was doing in terms of traffic reporting. But my motto was I'm going to show up every day until they fire me. And they haven't fired me yet, so here I am, 2026, still there.
You talk about your story, and you mentioned how you went to Channel 3 and started as a traffic reporter. Mm-hmm. What was the transition like to get to become an anchor? Like, how was that transition for you? What kind of work and sacrifices did that take?
It was a difficult transition, I have to be honest with you. School only teaches you so much. So Kent State and the University of Missouri and the programs that I have done along the way through the National Association of Black Journalists, they really helped give me the foundation. And so, but when I became that traffic reporter, there were deficiencies that I had that I didn't realize. And I don't want to necessarily say they're deficiencies, but in a sense, I spoke a certain way. So I spoke based on my culture, and I wouldn't pronounce the end of words and things like that. And that is what made it difficult, because other people who did not necessarily look like me did not like the way that I spoke. And some were nice about it and some weren't. They called me illiterate. And I had 2 degrees by that time. And even the news director at that time came and said, yeah, we're getting some racist emails, about you, but just hold on. And so WKYC, I will give them so much credit because they didn't give up on me. And so what they did was they hired a presentation coach as well as a voice coach to work with me, to work with how I speak, to sort of clean it up, a little bit. And so that not only could the Black community understand what I was saying, but every, community could understand. And I already knew the basics of like writing and doing those things because I had a journalism degree. And it was just continually, if there was an opportunity, saying, hey, I'll do it. At the time, we had a noon show, and it was like a sales, we call it a sales show, where people pay to be on the show. And there was a 5-minute news hole. And because my background was in producing, they wanted the person who anchored it to also produce it. And producing means you pick the stories, you write the stories. Because I knew how to do that.
Right.
And nobody else at the time I don't want to do that. I'll do it. And so I used that to just continuously get better. And then I just kept applying for different jobs, and I would get rejected, and I just say, okay, well, what am I lacking? And they would tell me, and I would just keep working on it. And so the doors slowly began to open, and 3 years ago, I was finally promoted out of traffic and to a weekend anchor and reporter position during the week.
You've mentioned that you went to 2 colleges to get 2 degrees. How did both of your degrees help you with your journey from becoming a reporter to becoming an anchor in the news business?
It was very helpful. So both of my degrees are from Kent State. So my undergraduate degree is from Kent State University, and so is my master's degree, just in different realms. And so the undergraduate degree helped me with basically the tools that I needed to be in the newsroom. So writing, how to put together, when you see me out there and I'm live here reporting on whatever story, and how to write that and how to perform on camera. And then the media management sort of really taught me about how the business works. And sometimes things happen in the business where you want to take it personal, but you realize, oh, it's just business. This is the decision they made, not because they're trying to hurt my feelings, but because this is what makes sense in terms of the business. So it's any type of education you can get is helpful.
Earlier you mentioned how you got certain comments by you due to the color of your skin. How has you breaking the standards set on you because you're a woman of color? How has that pushed you to do further and prove everybody wrong?
I think for me it all started with how I perceive myself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I hadn't received those comments, before. I remember when I was in high school, an English teacher she was like, I love hearing you on the morning announcements, but we really need to work on your diction. At that time, I didn't know what diction was. That's how you pronounce each portion of a word. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I remember saying, oh, I want to be a news anchor and reporter. And another guy said, you can't do that because you don't talk right. I was like, what? Yeah, and it just went over my head.
Right.
But those were the only 2 comments. And again, the teacher was just absolutely wonderful. I just didn't understand what she was saying. And so with that, I had to, when they would say, oh, she sucks. When are they going to get her off of air? I'm tired of this experiment that they're doing. And that was when I first started. I would just, instead of internalizing, I suck, I'm ghetto, I'm this, or I had to say to myself, no, I'm green, which means I just don't have the on-camera experience. So once I get the experience, I'm gonna be good. There's a difference between you suck and you just don't have the experience, so you just need to continue to work harder. And so for me, I did use that as a sense of motivation of, I'm gonna show you. like, you know, and I'm gonna continue to work. And then how also not to, and sometimes if I'm not, like if I get comfortable, I can slip back in the way that I used to speak. And there's nothing wrong with it, you know, in a sense. And sometimes those messages come back like, oh, okay, gotta be back on my P's and Q's here, talking like that news anchor. And so for me, it was just, I wanted to do it for myself. This was a dream that I always wanted. And someone gave me an opportunity to do it. And I didn't want to have any regrets that I didn't put my 100% effort into making it work.
Yeah. So at our school, we have a CTE, which is like career classes. And you've mentioned that you did news reporting at your school. Do you think that really set in stone that you wanted to become a reporter? Because you've mentioned that you always wanted to do this, but do you think having that class available to you really helped you know what you want to do?
Yeah, it solidified it. So with, I took newspaper. So it was like the English class, but we put together the newspaper. We didn't have what Lorain has. Wow, they do now. They do now, because actually one of my mentees teaches the course at Bedford, what you guys, but I would have been in heaven if we would have had that back old in the 1990s. But yes, that was so helpful because that newspaper position, again, it wasn't an extracurricular activity. It was, I went there every day for class. That teacher really affirmed that I was a good writer. And as a journalist, that is the core of the business, is knowing how to write and knowing how to put the story together. And so that really gave me confidence I remember I turned in my first newspaper article and he sat me down and was like, this is really good. I wasn't expecting this, you know, and I said, oh, then this may be, you know, something that I can really do. So that was extremely helpful. And anytime you can, even taking classes and you're saying, you know, this is not what I want to do, that's also helpful because that eliminates things. So you don't have to pay for college and in classes and going down a career field that you know you're not interested in.
Being a reporter, how do you decide what community stories deserve deeper attention from your perspective? So
I was just telling someone earlier today that I don't get to choose the stories that I do. I can only fight to do those stories. And so what happens is when I'm on a reporter shift, we're there at 9:30 or we call in while we're driving in to work and we pitch stories. And so really it's what are the stories that are going to resonate or really impact the community that we're serving. And unfortunately, sometimes those stories are the negative stories. Those, you know, like, oh, such and such is happening here. And so, oh, that's getting shared all over on social media. And we reward what the audience gives, you know, what the audience says they want to consume. But, you know, I often look and say, if we've been covering, like I'm the education reporter, and there was another district that they just had negative story. And I said, if we're going to cover all the negative stories, that's fine, because they are newsworthy, but let's try to cover some of their wins too. And so I also fight for those. And it's basically, you know, what do you think the entire community, because we're not just Lorain, we don't just cover Cleveland, but we're Akron, Canton, Lorain, Cleveland, we're all the way out in Ashtabula County. So will somebody in Ashtabula County enjoy this story about a student in Lorain? So that's how we sort of decide, like, will they care about this story? And a lot of times, some of the stories that just tug your heart and just really speak to humanity, those are the stories that resonate no matter where they come from.
So we did some research.
Yes, we did.
We found that you created and hosted your own show called Rising Initiative.
Look at you all, being great journalists.
And you've mentioned that like there's a lot of negativity on the news, and it seems like Rising Initiative was a way to like highlight the positives. Can you talk a little bit about that and what it was like making the show?
Yeah, so Rising was a segment within our 7 p.m. newscast. And what it did was it told the stories of people in Northeast Ohio who have overcome obstacles to achieve success and inspire others to do the same. And that came about because at the time of the company that owned WKYC back when we did Rising, they wanted to, they called it content innovation. So they wanted to sort of redo how we did news. So they selected people from all over the country with the stations that they owned, and we went to the corporate office, which is outside of the Washington, D.C., and I pitched Rising, and they liked it. And so then we put it through like a pilot, and it tested well, and then they gave WKYC the money to do it. Now remember, this is like a year or two after I had started, and we're still getting those, she sucks, get her off there, you know. But they trusted me to lead that initiative, which I truly appreciate. And so we put together a team, and I still did my traffic duties. And after the morning show, I would work on Rising and finding those stories that really connect with the heart of the community.
Yeah.
What Rising story has the biggest personal impact on you?
Well, the Rising story I would say that had the most impact was the one that helped me win an Emmy.
Fair enough.
Yes. But there were two, actually. The first one, our pilot, was about someone that I went to church with, and they had a daughter that passed away from a rare genetic disorder, and they talked about that and talked about how they overcame. And because I lived that with them, and they were able to, and usually you don't want to tell stories about people that you know, but I got permission to do that, and it was the way, they were just very compelling. And so personally, that one was personal to me because I remember them going through that process. I remember when the mom was pregnant with the baby and how beautiful she, and I don't want to say was, because I feel like she's still with us, but she just a beautiful little girl. She died at 2 years old, and I was there like a few hours after she died in that room with her as the family held. So to be able to tell their story and put their story out to Northeast Ohio was truly a blessing for me. And then I must always have some type of education stories. That was even before, you know. Wow, now that I'm thinking about it, wow, that's a foreshadowing. But the story that won was about a young man who had cerebral palsy, and he wanted to play on his basketball team. And he went to Garfield Heights. And so he had some challenges, and he made a deal with the Garfield Heights basketball coach that I think if he won some type of shootout, he would be able to play in a game. And he did. And he like shot a 3-point. And it had to be on Bedford, but my alma mater. But yeah, and just being able to tell the story, it was like a story of acceptance, because the best varsity players at that time were really rallying for this young man. And it was just a beautiful story about, you hear about teenagers and how they treat and they bully and things like that. So that was something very different as to where here these popular kids, sort of say, are bringing in this young man who has special needs and supporting him as if he had none.
Mm-hmm. How has telling these stories shaped your own perspective on resilience?
I think that's my personal motto of just, because life is going to always throw you life, as they say, not to be grammatically correct, but life be lifing. I know my kids say that. I know I'm a little old, but life sometimes just throws you a loop. And it's not about what happens to you in life. It's really how you respond to it and your perspective. And that is what's going to separate you from the next person. And so being able to tell these stories has inspired me to, even when it gets hard, like, okay, how can I make it through this? And how can I still keep a positive attitude? Now, don't get me wrong, I can still get mean and, all those different things, but how to not let that be the standard. Let that just be a blip and not who I am completely.
What's a moment in your career that made you think, this is why I do this?
Ooh. They happen often. Because I'm not gonna lie, it is very difficult and it's very challenging because we are constantly under deadline pressure, especially in reporting. But there was, actually, I read a story about myself from the Media Academy that you two are a part of. And I read this story like, who are they talking about? And I was just like, wow, it really spoke to me of the importance of what we do. And I was also telling someone earlier today, there's this young girl who during the pandemic, she was 9 years old and her dad was a DJ. And so her dad taught her how to DJ during the pandemic. So they will have DJ battles that they will put on the internet. Now, someone told me about it and I was like, that's a nice story. And so we were at the time trying to do a number of stories of how people were dealing with the pandemic and keeping their spirits high. So we did this story on 9-year-old DJ Lily Jade. And from that point on, we legitimized her as a news article or news station. And she used her parents showed that story to people. She ended up getting her own radio show.
Oh, wow.
She became a kid reporter for the Cavs. She is now traveling, the country. She was at one of the political conventions, DJ Lily J, and actually she has a TV show right now on our air for, I believe it's one of the hospital systems in Akron about more childhood. She is the host. And her father, I saw her a few days ago, and her father always says to me, he's like, it was that first story that you did that really opened up a door for us. And so, you had to think to yourself of like, wow, I was just doing my job. Right. It was a cute story. You got a cute kid and she was a great character. And to see how that work opened up doors for her, and it also made me like, well, wait a minute, I got to make sure I'm not doing stories like legitimizing people that don't need to be legitimized. But that lets you just know the power of the medium that we work for.
Yeah. What do you think is the most rewarding part of connecting with the Cleveland community, maybe as someone who grew up in Cleveland yourself?
Connecting with the Cleveland community. I like people. I'm a people person. I'm an extreme extrovert. I get my energy from people. I do need to rest and do need to take, time off, but I enjoy, that's probably one of my favorite parts of the job when we're not under the pressure of deadlines is being able to talk to people and them trusting you to tell their story and to have the responsibility to make sure that you get it right and that you don't do anything that's unethical, that makes them look bad in a sense or twist their story in a way that isn't truthful.
What advice would you give to young journalists who want to build a career in local news?
Pay attention to what's happening around you. Like many industries, we are going through a shift because of the business models of how local news runs. And so, to be honest, there are a lot of layoffs. People are consolidating to try to be successful. However, you focus on your craft, So you want to know the business part of it so you can see, maybe I might not want to go to that company because of they got layoffs coming. But you focus on your craft and getting good and continually getting better and learning what you want to do and in the field that you want to be in, so that you can be the cream of the crop. Because yes, AI is here, and AI is shifting a lot of industries, and so you want to make sure that you can do a job better than AI.
Well, that's all the questions we have for you today.
Okay.
Thank you
off the hot seat.
Thank you so much for coming. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you for having me, and good luck to both of you.
Thank you.